Good afternoon or good evening to everybody. I'm Tracy. Welcome to my blog, Compulsive Readers, where I talk to three of my favourite bloggers, Anne, Linda and Jo, and we like to discuss all the hot books that are coming out. Normally, as of last year, we were talking about books that were coming out, but now as we're in June, we're going to be talking about the books that have already been out. Most of us, well, only Anne has read all of her books. The rest of us are trying to catch up, but we've all picked 2 books per month from January to June. So that should give you 48 books in which to choose from, which is a long list. So I would suggest you get really comfy, grab a pen and a piece of paper and sit back and listen to us rattling on about books. And first up will be Anne to talk about her 2 choices for January.
Thank you very much. Okay, start because there's so many. My first choice is Wahala. Am I saying that right? Wahala by Nikki May, which was published by Doubleday, who are an imprint of Penguin Random House in January of this year. I really loved this book. It really took me by surprise. I found it really educational. I live in a tiny little town that's mainly made up of white faces. And I don't know anybody from Nigeria at all. And the 3 main characters in here are mixed race. They're English Nigerian heritage, and they live in London, and they're all good friends. And although their upbringing's been quite different individually, they've all got the same kind of cultural themes going through. And this friendship between them is really great. At times it's really funny, and then at other times it's really sad. And there's another friend who's part of the group, but a bit of an outlier, and she's quite manipulative, and she can manipulate the other 3 girls. It's really sensitively portrayed and quite sharp. And I think it might have been an option for screen. I believe that it has, and I think it would make a really good miniseries. So highly recommended. And the author's so lovely. She's really nice to talk to on Twitter. And her husband too. He's on Twitter. So that's my first book, and that's a debut. My second one is The Undiscovered Deaths of Grace McGill by C.S. Robertson, which was published on the 20th of January by Hodder, and the paperback is out in August. So C.S. Robertson, most people will know, is Craig Robertson, who's a Scottish crime writer. I don't know why he got rid of Craig and had an S instead, but maybe gone to a different publisher. They do those sort of stupid things, don't they? I think it's really intelligent. It's Grace McGill is a woman in her 30s, and she lives in Glasgow on her own with very little in her flat. And the only person that she loves is George, her cat. And Grace has got the most intriguing job that I've never heard of. She goes into the homes of dead people. So people who've died at home, and she cleans up after them. So apparently that's a thing, and that's Grace's job. And she's really good at it because she's quite insular. And she's actually really proud of what she does and how she looks after the people afterwards and looks after their belongings. But she often takes little mementos away from the dwellings. And her other main thing apart from her job is that she makes miniature models, which are called dioramas. And she recreates the rooms in which these strangers to her have died in the most intricate detail. So recently she's been sent to 2 assignments that have really bothered her quite a lot. And just looking at my notes, it's such a long time ago since I wrote this. And she's determined to dig deeper into these 2 deaths and how they might be connected. It's really tense. It's really original, and Grace is a great character. I really like her. And also, I've never been to Glasgow, but it feels like it's a character in itself. I feel as though I know it because I've walked the streets with Grace and Craig Robertson. It has twists and turns, but it's really quite surprising, but quite satisfying at the same time. And I really liked it. I like Craig's writing anyway. So I knew this was going to be good, and it really did surpass everything I expected. So there you go. That's my 2 for January. Thank you.
Thank you. I have also read Craig's book on your recommendation and can agree with everything you say. It's wonderful. But as you chose that, I had to choose 2 different ones. So my book for this one is Chloe Cates is Missing by Mandy McHugh. I have got written notes because I read it back in January, and to be honest, I can't remember what I had for lunch today, so how I'm going to remember what I read in January. This is a novel which was published in January, so obviously you can get it now. It's a standalone thriller about a young internet star that has gone missing from home. So Chloe Cates is 13 years old, and she has spent her entire life in front of a camera. And she's managed by her mum, who makes Kris Jenner seem like a gentle, I mean, she's nuts. This woman is absolutely nuts. She is unlikable. She's batshit crazy. She has dark secrets. Everything she does is for a like. She manipulates her daughter's life for likes. It is horrific what she does to this poor child. Now, Chloe Cates isn't even her real name. This is her internet name. She's been homeschooled. She hasn't got any friends, and she disappears one night. So basically, this book is fascinating for lots of reasons, but also it shines the most unpleasant and bright spotlight on the perils of social media. It really does make you think about how far some people do go for a like or a retweet, because the mother has turned this little girl into a profitable business. Nothing is off limits, and it's shocking, some of the behavior she does. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was really, really good debut novel. So also, you know, hats off, this woman has to get the award for worst mother of the year. So definitely you should read, if you love thrillers and you love things like that, read that. So that was book number 1. Book number 2 is The Maid by Nita Prause. Now, I'm going to be quite, I remember everyone was talking about this on the book club, and I very quickly read the blurb, and the blurb says, I am your maid. I know your secrets, your dirty laundry, but what do you know about me? So I downloaded it and started reading it one night thinking, God, this is going to be like a real dark thriller. This maid has got and then it's like, okay, this is Eleanor Oliphant versus the cactus versus, this is no thriller. This is a cozy mystery with a really quirky character, and it's actually quite funny because I think the blurb is actually misleading in a way, because I did not imagine it to be like this. So Molly is Molly the maid. She is the cutest little character you've ever met. She is 25 years old. She was abandoned by her mother as a baby and was raised by her loving and wonderful grandmother, who is just fantastic. She's very socially awkward. This is Molly, not grandma. She's unable to read any social situations. She's very naive and is often the victim of ridicule and bullying. But she has a job at the Regency Grand Hotel as a maid, and she is meticulous, and as Grace is about cleaning up her dead bodies, Molly is about cleaning the rooms of her guests. She is absolutely, you know, every surface, there's not a speck left when she finishes. And one day she discovers, when she's gone in to clean one of her rooms, that one of the clients has died, and he's in bed, and it's obviously, it looks suspicious. She was the last person to see him, and she, because of her quirkiness, becomes suspect number 1. So this is now her story of trying to find out what actually happened and clear her name. It's very, if you like Richard Osman's Murder Club, I think you'll enjoy this because it was out that sort of level. Molly's observational comments throughout the book are just so heartwarming and so heartbreaking. She has just got the most, and this is one of the very few reviews I wrote on my blog where I just kept putting quote after quote after quote from Molly, because her things that came out of her mouth were just pure magic. So I'm just I loved it, even though it was not what I was expecting. I had a nice little hidden surprise, I suppose. So I would say definitely read it if you like observational humour, but just also a clever little plot line and a sweet little story. So that's The Maid, and those are my two, and they're now out. So over to Linda.
Well, if you hadn't chosen The Maid and Anne hadn't chosen Wahala, I probably would have chosen both of those two anyway. So I thought they were both brilliant. My first choice is The Language of Food by Annabel Abbs. And I first discovered Annabel Abbs when she wrote The Joyce Girl, which was about James Joyce's sister. And The Language of Food is about Eliza Acton, who is a real character, and about her maid. And she's struggling with life, finding it difficult, runs a guest house, I suppose you would call it. And she's never even boiled an egg in her life, but she has to learn to cook. And Eliza Acton was actually the precursor to Mrs. Beeton. And Mrs. Beeton stole a lot of Eliza Acton's recipes. So it's about a real historical character, but it's a book that is beautifully written. Annabel Abbs writes incredibly poetically, brilliantly researched, and yes, it's historical fiction, and yes, it's about food, and there's very much a sense of the era, but also there's this dual first-person timeline between Eliza Acton and her maid Anne, and it's really a real insight into society and feminism and how women can actually do things for themselves. And you know me, I like a bit of feminism in my books. So an absolute delight, beautifully written. And those of you who know me know when I do my kind of star reviews and things and my books of the year, a book has to score 95 out of 100 or above to become one of my books of the year. And this is one of my books of the year already. So an absolute delight to read. Definitely about female friendships, historical, beautifully done. So that's my first one, which you might expect from me. That actually didn't come out until February, but I reviewed it in January, so we won't tell Tracy that. The next one, you wouldn't expect me to be holding up at all. Behind the Veil, by E.J. Dawson. She's a Canadian writer. And again, this actually came out the back end of last year, but was only really launched in the UK in January. And totally not the kind of read that you would associate with me. It's partly supernatural. It's about a clairvoyant, and her name is Letitia. She lives in Los Angeles. She's moved to Los Angeles from the UK because something disturbing has happened in the UK. And she can see the last moments of people as they die. So she knows what has happened. It's about, how would you describe it? It's about a ghost who is stalking and abusing children. And the problem for Letitia is, A, she knows this, and B, if she's not careful, she can become possessed by the evil that she is uncovering. So you wouldn't expect me to go for something supernatural. You wouldn't expect me to go for something that is a bit dark, but I thought it was absolutely fabulous. I really, really loved it. It's set in the 1920s, and the era is really well portrayed. And she has to struggle not to be seen as a charlatan. So she tries to keep away from people. But the way my heart rate increased at the end as it got closer and closer and closer to the denouement, it's quite a slim volume, but tautly written, frightening, not my usual read, and absolutely brilliant. And again, that is already one of my books of the year for 2022. So independently published, who's published this one? I can't remember. Oh, Literary Wonderlust. You know, not a publisher that I knew about, not an author that I'd heard of, but a fabulous read. And I think a lot of the book club readers will really love that one. So that's my second one for January.
Thank you. Jo?
Hello. Right, again, I read these back in January, and I haven't been able to make notes, so I will do my best. First book I've chosen is Other Parents by Sarah Stovall, if I pronounced that right, Anne? Stovall?
I think it's Stovall.
Stovall, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm terrible with yeah, Sarah Stovall. Yes. So that's not the cover. You can probably see the one there at the parents, just there. I think it's one of the first books I actually read this year, and as soon as I read it, I just knew, again, like Linda says, it was going to be on my books of the year. It's absolutely amazing. Female friendships in all their glory, shall we say. One of those ones that's told sort of multiple viewpoints. The reason I liked it was because it starts off in a school, and it's they're going to be teaching, let me have a look and see, and is it LGBTQ plus? Is that right?
LGBTQ plus, yes.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And one of the mothers is going to complain about it, and she's got very, very strong views about it. The poor head teacher is having to cope with this mummy mafia and all the parents who don't want their young children learning about things that could damage them. I know you've got that face, Tracy, but that's what happens, isn't it? You just, as soon as you mention anything, we actually had to have a chat in school this week about children using the word gay as an insult, and we've actually had to sit down and explain to them, if they knew, exactly what gay was, and just make it part of our everyday language, which is what it should be. But I was just waiting for all the emails to come in to complain about it, as you do. But here, Jo, the headmistress, she handles it beautifully. The mother who complains originally, I really thought, because of her views, I would absolutely hate this woman. But Sarah Stovall is brilliant at slowly unraveling her characters, so that the characters, you think you know them and you don't know them at all. It was just amazing. I absolutely loved it. Women's relationships, all the struggles that they have, but that little thread going through was absolutely amazing. And again, that is going to be one of my books of the year. Absolutely loved it. And the second one is a Nikki French novel, The Unheard. Now, I absolutely love Nikki French novels. I went off them a little bit. I wasn't so keen on the series, you know, the Monday to Saturday series with Frida. Wasn't so keen on that, but I say she, obviously everybody knows it is two authors who write together, husband and wife team, Sean French and Nikki Gerard. And this came out in hardback last year, and then it came out in paperback earlier this year. And I waited for the paperback, whereas I normally would purchase the hardback. But the reviews on Amazon are really not very good for this book. So I was like, well, I'm not sure, I'm not going to read it. Oh my God, it's absolutely amazing. Poppy is a bright, happy 3-year-old. Her paintings are full of colour and joy, except one, a menacing scribble of heavy black crayon. Her mother, Tess, is worried. Has Poppy witnessed something bad that she can't put into words? Tess is determined to find out what it might be, but no one will listen to her concerns. Nor will Poppy's father, from whom Tess is separated, nor her friends, nor the police. It's a child's drawing after all. But if Poppy's really did see something, then her and Tess could be in danger. If you like Nikki French, I think it's right back up with all the novels they published to begin with. Absolutely amazing. Loved it.
I listened to it on audio because I think, and I might be wrong, and I'm sure people will write in their thousands if I'm wrong. If you've got audio membership, I think it's one of the included ones, because I've downloaded all of Nikki French's individual standalones. I haven't listened to the series, and that was one, and I thoroughly enjoyed that one too.
I absolutely loved it. I really was so much better than I was expecting from the reviews on Amazon. So
we don't read reviews. If people want to know what books are about, they just need to follow decent bloggers.
I was going to say, yeah, we read your reviews. I don't read anybody else's.
On to decent bloggers, and February already so soon.
Gosh, don't the months go quickly? Okay, my first February book. This is a proof copy. It's not the proper cover. It's Notes on an Execution by Dania Kukafka. I think that's how you say it. It's published by Phoenix, which is a new imprint from Orion, headed up by Francesca Main. And I really like their books. They've published some really fantastic stuff. This is extraordinary. I was absolutely glued to it. I wasn't really quite sure what to expect. It was, Francesca sent it to me. I trust her. I thought, all right, I'm going to read it. The author makes it quite clear in her introduction that she's tired of the constant celebrity status of serial killers. So we all know of Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy and Peter Sutcliffe and Fred West. But what about the women? What about not only the actual victims of these men, but the women that are left behind, their mothers and their daughters and their sisters? So that's what she does in here. Ansel Packer is the serial killer, and he's on death row and he's waiting for his execution. And he's due to die in 12 hours' time. He doesn't want to die, and he's certain that he'll escape. He's manipulated people all through his life, and he thinks he's going to keep on doing that. We hear this Ansel story, and the story is told by Lavender, who is his mother, Hazel, his wife's twin sister, and Safi, who's the police detective who tracked him down and imprisoned him. And this is their story. And it's really raw and unflinching. It's shocking. I think there will be some readers who might get upset by some of the things that are in it. It makes you react really, really strongly, quite breathtaking. But it's not done gratuitously. It's not like, I don't think she thought, oh, I'm going to write something really shocking now. They're all going to hold the breath. I think it's really, really written from the heart. His behaviours and the way he treats people and the way he's been treated, how the women around him's been treated, it's so tense. And in the writing, it's just beautiful. So much so that I discovered another book by her and bought that immediately. I haven't read it yet. So I would really highly recommend it. It was February in hardback. I'm not sure if that was paperback as well. But that's number one. And then we just go completely on the other spectrum for book 2 of February. This is a proof copy. Can you see it? It's I received this in November in a lovely box with sweets and a card from Marianne Keyes. Signed.
So I'm sorry, I can't hear anymore. Can we just lose her? I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous.
So when this arrived, like thousands of other women of my age all over the world, it was like, oh my God, Rachel's back. It's again Rachel, and it was the 17th of February. I don't think paperback date's been announced yet. It's a big old brute of a book, isn't it? But I read it over Christmas and just sat there, like, you know, when you can at Christmas, you don't have to do anything else. You can just sit there all day in your pajamas, eating Bailey's cream liqueur chocolates and drinking avocado and reading.
I thought you did that all the time.
Yeah, all the time. It's wonderful. I mean, I've gone back recently and there's some really bad reviews. I don't know which book those people read. I really don't. And maybe those people have grown up and away from Rachel, but Rachel's grown up too. I'm not going to say where Rachel is, what's happened to her in those 25 years. That's for everybody else to find out. But needless to say, she's the same Rachel, but a different Rachel as well. Life hasn't been great, but she's still got that. She's still got a habit, but it's not drugs, it's trainers and gardening tools. And she's the head therapist in the therapy centre where she once was treated. And what I really loved about this so much was we learned about the patients in the clinic and about each one of them. And it broke my heart. It made me laugh, it made me cry. And I just thought, what a Christmas gift. It's wonderful. And I don't care what those other people say. They can all. And I've heard now, Marianne Keyes was on Twitter asking, which of the Walsh sisters would you like to come back next? So watch this space. That's my proof and my sign.
I have to say that when you did post your photograph to say that you received it, I did get a little bit jealous. And then I downloaded Rachel's Holiday again, even though I read it when it first came out. And it's one of the only books in my life I've reread. So I'm ready, I'm up to date. So whenever you want to post it to me, you know my address and I'll get it. Right. So my February books, one of my books has a very similar theme to your book, Jo. And this is my February book, The Herd. So again, this is a book that was talked about on the book club a lot, and I just bought it. You know, I follow the herd, and I just downloaded it. Wasn't quite sure what it was about, because obviously, if you read the blurb, it just tells you that two best friends are at polar opposites, but their unexpected friendships have always worked. They're the best of friends and godmothers to each other's daughters, because they trust that the safety of their children is both of their top priority. That doesn't make sense. Is their top priority. Little do they know that they differ radically over one very important issue, and it's how one harmless lie basically ripples through. So I wasn't quite sure what to expect, to be honest. But what it is, it tackles a very real issue. It's immunization, and given obviously the current pandemic and vaccine reluctance, it is a story that I think everyone should read, regardless of where you are, because it's very real, it's very topical. So as the blurb says, the story does centre around the two women, Elizabeth and Bryony, completely opposite, but they've been best friends for years. Both families, they live in the same streets, their husbands are best friends, and they're both godmothers to each other's daughters. And then the book actually starts in a court case, but you don't actually know what's happened. You know something terrible has happened and you're not sure what or how. And little by little layers are unraveled, and we start to find out what's happened. And it's the stories of your choice of whether to immunize your child or not. Why have you not done it? It's fascinating, because as much as, like you were saying, Jo, there is a mother that hasn't vaccinated her child, and you think, my God, you stupid woman. And then you kind of read into things and you find out more, and you begin to see both sides of the story. So I found it very educational as well, which I love. I love a book that, because I'm not overly intelligent, I love a book that I can learn from, because it doesn't feel like you're learning. It's enjoyable. So it reminded me a little of Jodie Small Great Things, because it was just the detail was so good, the minute details and the whole history and the education of the immunization. So I thought it was a really great book. I think it's, as I said, a very, very important book, and it goes into my top 10 of the year already. So that was February. The next book is, I have downloaded all the pictures, you can't tell, is completely change of genre, The House of Ashes by Stuart Neville, which was published in February. It's, if you like supernatural and you like ghosts and you like you like creepy stories, then you're going to love this one. It's not a light-hearted read. It's not a good feel. It's quite deep. It's quite dark. It's probably best to read it with the lights on. Well, you would do if you were reading with a book, you'd have the lights on anyway. If you had a paperwhite with back, you'd be fine, but put the lights on. It is a bit scary. It's very raw. I'm looking at my notes here because I read it back in February. I found it very raw. It was emotionally charged. It was heavy and dark, and it was very atmospheric. And it reminded me a lot along the lines, not in comparison, but just the feeling was of Room by Emma Donoghue, or by At the Last Thing to Burn by Will Dean, because you had that whole claustrophobic feeling about it. It is emotionally draining, so be prepared. You're not going to come away smiling. You're going to come away like, ugh. It's set in Northern Ireland, and the story centres around the Ashes, which was a large farmhouse which is now owned by a married couple, Sarah and Damien, who have moved back to Ireland from the UK. The previous owner, Mary, is now residing in a care home. Mary's in her 70s, and one morning Sarah opens the front door of her new home to find Mary barefoot and bloody at her front door, confused and convinced she still lives at this address. The the story has a dual timeline, obviously, and to the two wonderful narrators, which are Mary in the past and Sarah in the present, take the reader on a great and emotional and disturbing journey of the house. It's got a lot of issues, a lot of triggers. Perhaps people should be aware there's sort of a cult type topic line going there. I'm not giving anything away here, but this house has a horrific past. But I just found it compelling. It was very creepy, and I, as I said, would recommend it, but read with the lights on. So that is my February.
Right, my February. And this one actually was out in February. It's The Whale Tattoo by John Ransom. Came out from Muswell Press on the 3rd of February. And it's about a young man who had stormed out from home a couple of years before, and he's being told that death will follow him wherever he goes. And it was, the author wrote the book on his phone, on the bus, on the way to work, and he describes himself as a queer working class lad. And it is about his homosexual relationship with Tim Fish. The lad is called Joe Gunner in the story. But it's about grief, it's about loss, it's about identity, and really powerfully written and quite fractured. The prose is quite difficult to follow sometimes, and again, it's quite a slim volume and quite a lot of sort of white space as well. But it's brutal, it's tender. There's quite a lot of bodily fluids of various sorts in it. There's violence. There's quite a lot of explicit sex in it too, but that's all of those sound, oh my God, I wouldn't want to read that. But actually understanding Joe Gunner, the protagonist, and realizing the grief that he is going through and how his mental health has been affected, it is just stunning. It's an incredible first book. I mean, on the back, a couple of the sort of salient comments about it: a bold, brilliant and beautiful debut, raw, uncompromising, authentic. And it is all of those things. And it's not a book that I think a lot of people will have come across. So that was my choice. And that
choice of words as well.
Yeah. Anyway, there you go. Moving on. The next one is one that I've reviewed for my weekly, and I've only got a proof, but it's The Gifts.
Did you do that for the blog tour?
No, I did it for my weekly, and that's part of the problem. A lot of the blog tours I can't do because I've already promised that I'll review elsewhere. But I just loved this. I thought it was such a clever, interesting read, and it's a bit difficult to say, you know, what is it about really, because it starts off with a woman suddenly sprouting wings in the wood, and then there's all kinds of historical detail that goes into it. And if I just read you the blurb, it says, October 1840, a young woman staggers alone through a forest in Shropshire as a huge pair of impossible wings rip themselves from her shoulders. Meanwhile, when rumours of a fallen angel cause a frenzy across London, a surgeon desperate for fame and fortune finds himself in the grip of a dangerous obsession, one that will place the woman he seeks in the most terrible danger. And there's again a slightly fantastical, supernatural element to it, but it's about feminism. It's about how women can support each other. It's a thriller. It's a fantasy, and it's just wrapped up in the most beautifully written prose from Liz. Completely, I absolutely loved this one. There's about greed and ambition, and the descriptions in it are so evocative of the era. Really dramatic, really poetic language, but philosophy, science, religion, but all of it completely accessible, so that it's a thrilling story to read, really entertaining, and I can't recommend it highly enough for anybody who hasn't yet encountered it. So the gifts. And off the top of my head, when was that out? 17th of February. And that's from Manila Press. So cracking read, that one. So those are my 2 February ones.
Thank you. Jo?
I think the 17th of February, I think every book came out on the 17th of February. You have those dates, don't you? It was like out on the 17th of February. Because I think this one was out on the 17th of February as well. The Interview by C.M. Ewan. Well, Chris Ewan. I don't know, again, as Anne says, sometimes if they change publishers, they knock off their first name and just put some initials. This is great. It's one of those really, I wouldn't say it's very character driven. It's all about the action. It's all about the adrenaline rush. Fantastic premise. So 5 p.m. on a Friday, you've been called to an interview for your dream job. It's a stunning office, 13 floors above the city below. You're all alone with the man interviewing you. Everyone else has gone home for the weekend. The interview gets more and more disturbing. You're feeling scared. Your only way out is to answer a seemingly impossible question. But if you can't, what happens next? So, reminded me a bit of Die Hard, you know, the first one and the best one. Obviously in an office block trying to escape. I think this one, Kate, her name is Kate Harding, goes for this interview. It's her dream job. Nobody else knows she's there, apart from the lady who got her the interview. It's like an agency have got her the interview. Nobody else knows she's there. She realises pretty quickly that the interview isn't quite what she's looking for, but seems to be stuck in the office because she cannot leave the building. So there you go. Absolutely great. Very, very fast paced. And now the next one, I think I kind of snuck this in because I don't think it was really out in February. And I've just tried to look for my review for this and I can't find it anywhere. And I think the reason is I actually don't think I could write a review of this book because it's not only one of the best books I've ever read. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's up. I've actually, I bought 3 copies of it after I read it. And I kept one for me, gave one to my daughter. I said, you've got to read this. You must read it. I've heard it described as a post-apocalyptic Bridget Jones, but that makes it sound a little bit light and a little bit, I mean, there is a lot of humour in it, but it's very, very dark. What if the end of the world was kind of fun? Yeah, it's not. December 2023, the human race has fought a deadly virus and lost. The only things left from the world before are burning cities and rotting corpses. But in London, one woman is still alive. Although she may be completely unprepared for her new experience, as someone who has spent her life trying to fit in, being alone is surprisingly liberating. It sounds very sort of, not chick lit, but quite light. And there's a lot of triggers in there. Language is absolutely foul. So a lot of the situations she comes across, she does not react.
Seagulls, Jo, the seagulls.
Oh, don't! No!
I'll never forget those seagulls ever in my life.
Oh, for me, it was as soon as the dog came into it, it was like, oh my God, no, please do not put a dog in this book. And the scenes with the dog, I had to keep putting it down because I just couldn't read these scenes with this dog. It just, why do people put dogs in books? I just can't cope with it. I loved everything about it. It's probably, I mean, it's my book of the year already, probably. And it's on my shelf now. I've got a shelf over here with all the best books I've ever read. And it's on that shelf already. It's brilliant. It's so lovely. But the end, I didn't like the end. And then I keep going on Amazon thinking, is she going to write more? She must write some more.
Now. There's a new one.
Thank you, Jo. I've just bought it. It's now on my Kindle.
Oh, it's amazing. Oh, Tracy, you will love it. It is absolutely amazing. So yes, my daughters have both got. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm there for you, Tracy, when you get to the seagulls.
Yes, yeah.
And I have to have a group Zoom when I get to see seagulls. Okay.
Oh, honestly, no, it's brilliant. I can't sell it hard enough. Buy it.
I don't know what she's done, but she's frozen herself. Oh, there she is. Right, that's January and February done. Let's move on to March. Let's march to March.
March, the month of the bloke's birthday. Okay, number one book for March is Reputation. Do you know, when I tweeted this, I kept calling it Redemption. Reputation by Sarah Vaughan. I love Sarah Vaughan. I read all of her books. I think it's 5 now. I loved her first 2, which were kind of contemporary women's fiction-y things, and then bang, Anatomy of a Scandal came along, and I thought, wow. And the last one I didn't love as much, but then this one, she's really back at the top of her game. Sarah used to be a political journalist for people like The Guardian, so she really knows the ins and outs of the House of Commons, and you can tell. I don't know if you watched Anatomy of a Scandal. I
finished it last night. I watched it, binged it.
I binged it one night. You know, it was like 9 o'clock. Oh, shall we watch it? 2:30 the next morning. Let's go to bed. But this is back in that sort of era. So Emma Webster is a politician. She was brought up by her father, who always used to say to her, what are you going to do about it? So she got out and did it, but she really didn't expect to become an MP quite so quickly. She went into local government, and all of a sudden she was voted into the House of Commons, which cost her her marriage. So she's split up from her husband. They've got a daughter between them. And she's always been one for women's rights and sticking up for people who are wrongly accused of things. And revenge porn's a big thing for her, trying to, you know, get rid of that. But there are other people in constituencies, usually men, who would rather that she dealt with other things. And she is constantly trolled online. And honestly, some of the stuff that gets sent to her on her social media is just disgusting. You know, and I've had a few social media spats in my time, but honestly, how anybody goes back on there after some of the stuff that goes here. Anyway, Emma is on trial for murder. That's the thing. She's the first MP to stand trial for murder, and that's what this is about. It's the case seen through Emma's eyes. Her daughter, 10-year-old daughter, has quite a lot to do with it. It's quite terrifying, quite eye-opening. It's so relevant. You know, an MP's been arrested today, hasn't they, accused of rape. Anatomy of a Scandal just went bing, 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 bing. You know, this is not fiction. Okay, this is a fictional story, but this is based on our truth, on who controls us and who is setting our laws. And it's just excellent. And I'd really like to see this one made into a miniseries too.
Sure, so will Sarah, probably.
I'm sure she would. It's so reflective of the times that we live in. And for women, they're not great times, are they, really? Are we going forwards? Who knows? There we go. So my next one is, this is the proof copy. This is Faceless by Vanda Simon and was published on the 17th of March by Orenda. Most readers in the UK who know Vanda will know her Sam Shepherd series. So Sam Shepherd is a police detective and Vanda's written a series. This is a standalone and nothing to do with Sam, and was previously published in New Zealand as The Faceless, and Vanda rewrote it for the UK market. It is really incredible. It is crime fiction, but it's really quite psychologically chilling. It's about 3 main characters, Billy, Max and Bradley. Billy, female Billy, and Max both are homeless and live on the streets in Auckland. They're 2 completely different characters from 2 different backgrounds. And Bradley's a middle-class executive. He's angry and he's tired and he hates his boss. And one night he and Billy cross paths. And from there, it's the beginning of a story that's very, very uncomfortable. What Vanda does well, I think, is make these characters, they're not defined by the fact that they're homeless. Being homeless defines some of the things that happen to them, but they are real characters and true characters, their own selves. They're rounded and they're full, and they've both got their reasons for being on the streets. It's twitchy and chilling. You know, Bradley's not a nice man, and Billy meeting him wasn't the greatest thing to happen to her. Max is a wonderfully flawed, deeply flawed character who is flawed by events that have happened to him in the past that have led to him being on the streets. It proves that she can write more than police procedural. She can really get to the heart of it, that chill. And I mean, again, like Reputation, it's today's issues. It's people that are on the street because of not things that are not really their doing, and what happens to them, what can happen to them. It's really, really, really excellent stuff, and I'd highly recommend this. That's my March done.
Thank you. Okay, my March, hold on. Yeah, right, book. First book in March is Remember Me by Charity Norman. I am a huge fan of I've read all of Charity's books. They're all topical, they're all original, they're all beautifully written, they're all beautifully researched. So when Anne, darling Anne over there, said, would you want to be on the blog tour? I said yes, without even looking at what the blurb was. And then about a month before the tour, I like to read my books in advance, so I know I'm looking, and started to read it, and I was like, I actually don't know if I can read this now, because this is about this is about a lady, a middle-aged, a mother who has living in the UK, and her name is Emily, and she has grown up in New Zealand. She now lives in the UK. She has an older son, and her father has been diagnosed with dementia, and he needs to be looked after, and the other two siblings aren't able to do it. And as she's on her own, she can do it. And my father has just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and early onset Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. So it's all very raw to me. So reading this was quite difficult. I'm going to be honest. It wasn't an easy read, but I read on. Emily doesn't have a great relationship with her father. He was a doctor in his prime. He was very aloof as a man, as a father. He was great for his patients. He was well respected in the community, but as a father, he was quite cold. She's got to go over and look after him because he lives in a very isolated place, and his mental health is obviously deteriorating. His health is deteriorating. So she flies over with, planning to literally look after him for a couple of weeks and try and set some sort of care up for him. But when she moves back to New Zealand, it brings up some memories that she has suppressed for years. And one particular memory, which has caused ripples of grief throughout this small town, is that her close friend and neighbour, Leah, disappeared on a hike 25 years ago. Nobody's ever found her body. The family have never recovered, and it's just destroyed this whole town. And now the press are looking to sort of do a rehash of the crime and look back. So she starts to uncover some things, and she starts to look at boxes around her dad's place, and she's finding clues to this girl, and she's beginning to question what's going on. So throughout it, you think you know what's going on, and I have to tell you, you haven't got a clue what's going on. I mean, you think you know what's going on, and then bam, something completely different happens. And it's a real heart-warming but heartbreaking story. It's all about secrets. It's about betrayal, hurt, and forgiveness. It's really emotionally charged. The story is full of compassion. It's full of warmth, but the grief and the loss, yes, beautiful. And as usual, she gets 5 stars from me. And if anyone hasn't read any of Charity Norman's books, there isn't one that's better than the other. They're all phenomenal. So I would say read as many as you can. So now my next book is the first one that I haven't read. So I apologize in advance, but hopefully they can see all my emails coming in here. So there you go. This Might Hurt by Stephanie Roble. Now, Stephanie wrote The Recovery of Rose Gold, which I absolutely loved. And it was another dark and dysfunctional. So I'm hoping this is as dark and dysfunctional. All I can do is read you out the blurb, because obviously I haven't read it, which says, welcome to Wisewood. We'll keep your secrets if you keep ours. Kit Collins needs help. Hopeless and directionless, she signs up to Westwood, a self-help retreat which promises a new way of life. Natalie Collins has a terrible secret, a secret that would destroy her sister Kit, a secret that no one knows, at least that's what she thinks. But somehow Wisewood knows everything, and if Natalie doesn't do exactly as they say, they'll tell Kit the truth. I think we have a drum roll now. So that's my March books. One I loved and one I hope to read shortly. Linda.
Okay, my first March one is Anna Mazzola's, or Mazzola. I never know how to say her surname. I just call her Anna Maz because it's easier. The Clockwork Girl, which came out from Orion on the 3rd of March. And the catalyst for the story for Anna was the real disappearance of children in Paris in the late 1700s. And it's steeped in history, but it's also quite nasty. There's very much a sense that there's something rotten in the state of Paris, particularly in Versailles. And if I just read you the blurb, it'll give you a bit of an insight. In the midst of an icy winter, as birds fall frozen from the sky, chambermaid Madeleine Chastel arrives at the home of the city's celebrated clockmaker and his clever, unworldly daughter. Madeleine is hiding a dark past and a dangerous purpose. To discover the truth of the clockmaker's experiments and record his every move in exchange for her own chance of freedom. As children quietly vanish from the Parisian streets, rumours are swirling that the clockmaker's intricate mechanical creations, bejewelled birds and silver spiders, are more than they seem. And soon Madeleine fears that she's stumbled upon an even greater conspiracy, one that might reach the very heart of Versailles. And there's some really menacing moments in this, but she writes so beautifully and so mesmerizingly that the senses are so well done that it places you there in the story, and it is actually quite unnerving at times. I mean, creating a rabbit by, taking a rabbit apart to see how it works and those sorts of things to get the automata realistic. But it's also about how women are controlled by men, how servants are used by the people who employ them. And Madeleine finds herself being double-crossed, and she's a clever, smart girl, despite the fact that she's from a lowly position. And so there is a real kind of psychological element of how we control people and how we are controlled by others. So quite gothic, historical, creepy, a mystery, surprise, surprise from me, slightly feminist, but a really, really excellent read. And again, it's one of my books of the year for this year. I've chosen all the ones that I've really, really enjoyed. And then the next one, I don't have a proper front cover for, but I think I did the blog tour for you for this, didn't I? Peach Blossom Spring.
Yeah, that's the copy I've got as well.
Yeah, by Melissa Fu. Oh, excuse me. And this came out from Headline Wildfire on the 17th of March. It starts off with the Japanese invasion of China. And it's about families who are trying to escape from the planes bombing them. And I started to read it just as the Russians invaded Ukraine. So it had a real resonance. And it is about war. It's about how we can become refugees. It's about immigration. And it moves through the sort of 1938 China. And I didn't really know anything about what happened between Japan and China sort of around the time of the Second World War. And like Tracy said, if it's a book that can educate you as well as entertain you. But again, there's a thread of fables that runs through it that kind of echoes through the whole thing. And then the child from the story years later is an immigrant in America. And it shows you how difficult it is to establish yourself. So it's about cultural identity as well as being historical. I would call it literary fiction, actually, rather than historical fiction. And at the beginning, I thought, oh, I'm going to really struggle with this. There are lots of Chinese names. I'm not sure who's who. And it took a little while to get into the rhythms of it. But once I did, I thought it was phenomenal. And I really recommend that people have a look at this, because the lessons of history have not been learnt. And, you know, when we had the Ukrainians trying to find refuge here and the obstacles that were being put in their way, all of that is here in this book for the Chinese trying to reach America. And it just is an epic, sweeping story, but it's really about what it's like to be fractured from your sense of cultural identity and have everything that you believe in and everything that you own swept away from you, including who you really are as a person. So fabulous book, thoroughly enjoyed it. So I really recommend that one too. Peach Blossom Spring. So those are my March ones.
Okay, so for March, I'm back on crime thrillers again. The first one I've got is The Night Shift by Alex Finlay. Now, I love Alex Finlay. This is the second of his books that I've read. I don't see many people reviewing his books though, but for me, he's right up there with your Harlan Cobens and your Linwood Barclays. And he's got a fabulous cover quote from Peter James, no less, who says, "A terrific thriller, tautly written with compelling characters. I was totally hooked." So basically, Peter James has said exactly what I was going to say. So I'll just leave it there. But no, it's great. It's got a great premise, this one. It starts on New Year's Eve in New Jersey. It's 1999. So that's that night where we're all expecting everything to stop working at midnight because of the time. They said everything, you had to take money out of your bank just in case your cash machines wouldn't work. But there's 4 teenagers working in a Blockbuster Video. Remember them? And they are attacked, the 4 girls, and 3 of them die and only 1 survives. The police quickly identify that it's the boyfriend of one of the girls who's died that's committed the crime, but unfortunately they can't find him. He disappears. We fast forward 15 years and there's another incident at an ice cream shop in the same small town. Again, 4 teenage girls working in an ice cream shop. Again, somebody breaks in exactly the same method. 3 girls are murdered and 1 is left alive. Again, the police think, well, we know who's committed this crime. It's going to be the same guy who committed them 15 years ago. They bring in an FBI agent, Sarah Keller, to try and find this killer. But it's basically about the 2 girls, those final girls, as they like to call them in the horror movies, that are last 2 left alive, and the brother of the man who's the suspect for these murders. It kind of brings all these characters together, and let's just say that it's not what you're expecting. It's one of those books you'll want to read in one sitting. I did. It's not a thick book. It's very, very gripping, and you'll want to know exactly who's committed these murders. If it is the boyfriend who disappeared 15 years ago, if it is, what's he been doing for 15 years and why has he come back and why has he chosen to kill again? So that was The Night Shift by Alex Finlay. Super writer, love his books. And the next one was a real surprise for me. I think I was going to talk about it and I hadn't read it by that time, and I thought, I'm not sure about this one. And then I read it and I absolutely loved it. It's called 12 Secrets by Robert Gold. This one it's about a man, Ben Harper, and his life's changed forever when his older brother is murdered by 2 classmates. It's one of those crimes that shocks the nation, in all the papers, and it brings their hometown into the spotlight. And we all know those times when these awful murders have taken place, and the town seems to get tainted by whatever evil has happened there, doesn't it? 20 years on, he's an investigative journalist, and he's now settled back into his hometown. But then there's another murder, and this murder then shines some fresh light on what happened to his brother 20 years ago. And it's one of those books where you've got your small town and everybody knows each other, and somebody's obviously got something to hide. And Ben is about to find out, putting his own life at risk. And it is absolutely, it says it's great. A small town, a shocking crime. And again, one of those books that is absolutely impossible to put down until you find out what's happened. So that's my other book for March.
Brilliant. Well, ladies, we've managed to do halfway in an hour. Let's speed this up because some of us want to go to bed early. So we're going to whiz through April. Anne, you're off you go.
Let's whiz through April. My first April book is Quicksand of excuse me, Quicksand of Memory by Michael J. Malone, published on the 14th of April by Arenda Books. Michael J. Malone writes crime with real depth. This is a book about Jenna and Luke, but the main character is Daniel, but Daniel's been dead for 25 years or so. It's about Daniel had a big influence on everyone's life, and it's the result of his life and how it's affected their lives now. It's about how we look at our memories and how we think about what we think we remember, how other people remember those same things in completely different ways, and how we deal with it. It's really quite dark. It's emotionally challenging, but it's so psychologically on balance. It's really wonderful. He's such a great writer, really high class crime. So we're going quick. Next one. Nobody But Us by Laurie Van Rensburg, 14th of April again, by Michael Joseph. So the marketing blurb said, get ready to meet 2022's most toxic couple, and by God, they are. The prologue is like violent, raw. You think, if you don't read past the prologue, then there's something wrong with you, because it's amazing. And you meet Ellie, who's a student, and Stephen, who is her professor. They're going off to spend a weekend together. And outwardly, they are a young, kind of immature, naive student, and her professor, who's quite confident and, well, don't believe what you see on the front. They really aren't what you think they are. They go away together, and the description of the cabin that they're staying in, and the storm outside, and the woodland outside, and they're trapped in there together, and you have no idea what's going to happen. And then when it does happen, it's like, what the hell? It's really good. It just takes you all over the place, so you don't expect it at all. So yeah, two very toxic, fantastic characters in this one. There you go. Was that quick enough, Tracy?
Thank you very much. And next up is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. Now, I've never heard of Frida McFadden before. I don't know whose fault that is, but they were talking about it on the book club as usual, so I downloaded it because everyone was saying how wonderful it was. And oh my God, it's incredible. And what's even better is she has a huge back catalogue of books, all on psychological thrillers, and they've all got thousands of reviews. So I've no idea why we've missed this. But anyway, The Housemaid by Frida McFadden was out in April. It's obviously buy it. It's incredible. I don't want to give anything away. It's about a young lady called Millie. She's recently been released from prison, where she has served a very long sentence for a crime we don't know what it is at the moment. We haven't got a clue what she's been, but she has tried a couple of dead-end jobs, and for various reasons she's now living in the back of her car. She applies for a job as a live-in housemaid for a rich couple, Nina and Andrew, and their 9-year-old daughter Cecilia. She goes along to the interview. The woman is incredibly, she's immaculately dressed. The house is stunning. And she doesn't think she's got the job, but a week later she gets a phone call, she's got the job. She moves in and she's set into a little attic room at the top of the house, and everything suddenly looks different from her initial interview. The house is now it looks like, it appears that I've got here that Nina has had some sort of personality transplant, because she's completely gone batshit crazy. And I love using that word because it describes her perfectly. She is unhinged, this mother. The daughter is creepy. She dresses like, it just, everything about it is creepy. The mother is mad. The father is very, very handsome. And of course, Millie starts to have feelings towards him. I can't tell you much about this book because there's some shocking surprises and twists. I know that Joe read it and messaged me and said, oh my God, I can't put it down. It's jaw-droppingly good, I think. It's definitely gone into my top 10 of 2022. I wasn't able to put it down because I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. So highly recommended. So that is my book for, where are we? We're in April. That is my book for April. One book for April. The next book for April is Will Dean, Firstborn. Our favourite furry friend, Mr. Dean, has released his latest standalone novel. If you haven't read Will before, he has a whole series based in Sweden with elks and a lovely deaf investigator journalist, but this is a standalone novel. And if you have watched this before, you'll know that we all raved about his first standalone novel, Last Thing to Burn. So this is Firstborn, came out in April. I love books about twins. I don't know why. I don't really even know any in real life. I just find them fascinating when they're written about, because you kind of take it to the next level. You can't review this book really easily because there's so many twists and turns, and you just haven't got, but all I can say is we have quirky characters, we have a murder, we have New York, we have secrets, we have atmospheric twists, and it's really, really clever. I did literally have my mouth open, which is not uncommon for me, but I was speechless a lot of the time. There were a few moments where I went, what? And I think other people were, what? Huh? But still haven't quite understood it. But yeah, read that. I really, really enjoyed it. It's nothing like Last Thing to Burn. It's completely different sort of feel to it. It's not as atmospheric. It's not sort of deep and dark and like that. It's more like, it's a ride around New York. It's very, very good. And I really enjoyed it. So that's my second book for April. Joe.
It's me.
Sorry, Linda.
I loved that one as well, but it's Will. So there you go. Right. Yeah. Very quickly. A Little Hope, Ethan Joella, out from Muswell Press on the 28th of April, back in usual Linda territory. It's a quiet book, it's literary fiction. It's set in a small Connecticut town over the course of a year. They're, again, fairly slim volume, but lots and lots of different characters, but they all intertwine. And I read somewhere that it was described as a kind of Venn diagram of characters. So it's kind of like short stories, except it isn't, because they're all interlinked and all the characters are interwoven. There's all sorts of themes in here. There's betrayal, there's trust, there's grief. Somebody is struggling with cancer. Just ordinary life, beautifully written about. And it's so touching and so uplifting, quite funny in places, quite quirky, quite sad. And it's just a book that makes you feel there are people out there, a proper community, and that you can be part of the world. And I think a lot of us have felt quite isolated over the last 2 years. And I think this is a book about reconnecting with other people. So A Little Hope, Muswell Press, Ethan Joella. My first one. And then I've only got a proof of the next one. But it is Miss Aldridge Regrets Louise Hare, and I just love this. It's like a modern day Agatha Christie. It's set in 1936, and Lena Aldridge is a wannabe starlet. She works in the nightclubs, she sings, she dances and so on, and she's made an offer where she's told that she can have a position on Broadway. So she goes on the Queen Mary, heading off to New York, and while she's on board ship, there happen a spate of murders and control and manipulation, and it is elegant, it's atmospheric, it's cozy crime, it's just so much fun. It's glamorous, but it's cleverly written as well, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. So anybody, to be honest, I'm not a great Agatha Christie fan, but anybody who likes that kind of 20s 30s atmospheric crime fiction will love this. I haven't put my review out yet because it's coming out on my weekly sometime. I never know when they're coming out, but fabulous book. 28th of April, and that was from HQ. So those are my April ones, very quickly.
Thank
Hello.
you.
Right, April. I haven't got a copy of this one because I have lent it to a friend for her holiday. It Ends at Midnight by Harriet Tice. I was attracted to this one. It's set in Edinburgh, and I love books set in Edinburgh. Set in Edinburgh with twins, I'd have been even happier, but hey, just like you with the twin books. This one, toxic female relationships at its core. It starts with somebody has died, some poor dog walker. Oh, the description of the dog finding the blood. Oh no, turn my stomach. But then you're thinking, what's happened here? Lovely lady has decided to renew her marriage vows. Well, I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to spoil it too much, but she's having this fabulous big party in Edinburgh on New Year's Eve. And it obviously ends very nastily with somebody dead in a very nasty way as well. Absolutely loved that one. Very gripping, kept me, I think it was one of the ones where I sat at the weekend, just read the whole book and I've given it to a friend because she wanted to take it on holiday with her. And the next April book is, again, one of my books of the year, is Little Sister by Gaitha Lodge. Now, this is a series. This is the fourth in the series, the Jonas Sheen series. But you can read it as a standalone, and I'm saying that because I know a lot of people like you, Tracy, don't like to read them out of sync. So if you haven't read the first three, you would want to read this. You can, but you must because it's brilliant. It's a standalone. Jonah's out having a drink at the local pub with his baby, and in his line of sight, he suddenly sees a girl walking out of the woods. And this girl is covered in blood, but she doesn't look upset. Jonah goes to her and asks if she's okay. And it turns out that she is one of two girls that's recently gone missing. She went missing with her sister. She's there, her sister isn't. What I loved about this is it's the way it's told. It is so cleverly done. I mean, she writes beautifully, very involving. You become part of the investigation right from the word go. But the way that it's told, they take the girl to the police station, and then she kind of plays with them a little bit because she wants to tell her story, and she wants to tell her story in her own words, in her own time, whilst they're also in the background trying to solve the crime. But her books are amazing. You can read it as a standalone. So if you haven't read the other three books, you don't have to. But once you've read this, you'd want to anyway. So you may as well just start at book one. There you go. That's my April ones.
Thank you. And May. Let's run into May.
Okay. my first book for May this is a proof copy. It's That Green-Eyed Girl by Julie Owen Molan, and it's published by Michael Joseph on the 12th of May, and it's a debut novel. This is a dual timeline novel, and I love a dual time. It's set in the 50s and the 70s, and I love those two eras, and it's set in New York, and I love books set in New York. So this is a total winner for me. And the cleverness of it is that it's set in the same apartment, but in the 50s and the 70s. In 1955, it's the home of Dovey and Gillian, two female teachers who live together, but on the face of it, they're just two teachers who share a home, but they actually are in a relationship, but that's not allowed. And if they get found out, they'd lose their jobs and all the awful things that went off in those days. In 1975, 15-year-old Ava lives in the same apartment with her mother. Her father's left, he's now shacked up with flashy candy. Her mother lives on drink and tablets, and Ava feels very responsible towards her. And one day a box is delivered to Ava, and when she looks in it, she finds photographs and a scarf and a little necklace. And it's quite obvious that these belong to Dovey and Gillian. And Ava then decides she must track down at least one of the women to return these. It's so beautifully and cleverly interwoven. The story of Dovey and Gillian is heartbreaking. Their love is so true, but their fear is just so palpable. It really, really is great. And Ava herself, she's just a young girl. She's got so much responsibility. There's the cold, New York whistling wind, and there's the baking heat in the summer. The apartment that's hardly changed over the years. It is really, really quite beautiful. It's kind of a crimey mystery, coming of age type novel. Really, really well done and very stylish. I would recommend that wholeheartedly. Right, let me have a little drink. And my next book, so this really surprised me. This is Tell Me an Ending by Jo Harkin, published 12th of May by Hutchinson Hyman, which is part of Penguin. So this could be classed as science fiction, and I don't read science fiction. It's kind of science fiction dystopian, so it's kind of Handmaid's Tale sort of thing. So imagine you could wipe out a memory. You're no longer haunted by something that happened to you or something that you did. That's what's offered by the memory clinic in this book. And people pay their cash, they go and they get this memory wiped away. But there's two types of clients. There's the self-informed. So they're the people who say, right, I'm going to go and get this memory rid of because I'm tired of this. And they go and they get it done. And then there's the self-confidential. They don't just have their memory erased, they have the memory of having that memory erased. So once it's gone, but they don't know that they did it. Anyway, things don't always go to plan, and there's reports that some clients are having traces of memory. So the clinic have written to all of their clients to tell them that they can have the memory restored if they wish. And of course, some of the clients don't know that they had a memory removed. So they're getting a letter saying, you had a memory removed in X year, do you want it put back? They have no idea what that memory was. So there's that part of it. And we follow 3 or 4 of the clients of the clinic, but we also follow people who work at the clinic, as most especially Noor, who's been there for a long time, but she's still quite young and quite naive. And she totally believed in what the clinic did. And as things move on, she realizes that actually things weren't quite as she thought they were. It's really, really wonderful. It's a big, huge book, but it took me a weekend to get through it. It just totally gripped me. It was unlike anything I've read before. It's very, very clever. It's quite frightening. You know, I thought about it for ages. What would you do if you got that letter to say, remember when you had that? Well, you don't remember, but you've had a memory erased. Would you like it putting back? It's like, what the hell? You know, I'd be kind of, oh yeah, go on. What was it? I really want to know because I'm quite nosy. But it's really clever. It's inventive and sharp, well written. The characters are rounded, and some of them are awful. some of them you really sympathise with. It's very, very good. Highly recommend that one too. And that's May for me.
Thank you. My first May is Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. Have anyone's read that yet here? No?
No,
Okay.
it's Michelle.
Okay, so Gillian has written lots of books now. This is her latest standalone thriller, and they all have some sort of, normally have a legal line. This one doesn't. All of her books have been original and clever and thought-provoking, and this is no exception. Wrong Place, Wrong Time. When I finished reading the book, honestly, I thought, how the hell am I going to review this book? Because it's absolutely, it's not even difficult to review. It's difficult to even explain to you. But basically, it's every parent's nightmare. So you've got a lady called Jen. She's a devoted mum. She has a teenage son. She's happily married to Kelly. I didn't like his name. That was the only downside of this book. I didn't like his name for some reason, but anyway, happily married to Kelly. Jen is a hardworking divorce lawyer, and she's a little bit overprotective over her son. One night, he's about to be coming up to 18. She's waiting for him to, oh, Joe's disappeared. She didn't like the book. She's waiting for him to, I'm going to wait for her to come back. She should be back soon. Waiting for her son to come home. And she oversees him look out the window, and she sees him stab someone and kill them. He gets arrested. She goes down to the police station. She goes home, and she wakes up the next morning, and she's now living the day before the actual attack. And she doesn't know what's going on. Her son is there, so she starts to wonder what's going on, and she starts to think about things. And then she goes to bed the next night, and she wakes up a couple of days prior, and there's so on and so on. So it's a time travel sort of, it's obviously not real. It's not based on any true story. But she keeps waking up literally days, weeks, months, years, decades prior to this event. So she understands that she's somehow being given the opportunity to stop this crime and save her son. I just found it fascinating because I have no idea how Gillian managed to keep hold of what was going on. The notes she must have written, it must have been an app. It was like a Rubik's Cube of trying to work out how to plot this story, going back the generations and going back decades that involved her father and how she met her husband, etc. It was just confusing, but not in a confusing way. It was so confusing, but in a good way, not in a bad way. It was very clever, very addictive, so well plotted, very moving in certain parts, and shocking. But again, I absolutely loved it, so I highly recommend it. But it is one of those, what, how? But yeah, definitely a good one. My next book is going to be very, very quick because I haven't read it, and that is Liar Mouth, which is by John Waters. This is the legendary filmmaker has written his first novel. I don't know why, I think poor old Joe's disappeared.
I heard that she's been kicked off because she's got a bad connection, according to a message.
Okay. So all I can tell you is it's been dubbed as a perfectly perverted feel-bad romance, and the reader will thrill to hop aboard this delirious road trip of righteous revenge. I can't say that. So that is out on the 5th of May, or was out on the 5th of May. So that was my second book for May.
Well, my May book was originally going to be out in February, and then was going to be out on the 12th of May, and actually came out on the 28th of April, but I reviewed it in May, so we're going to stick with May. And it's Kate Ruby's Tell Me Your Lies, and it's billed as a psychological thriller, and I don't think that does it any favours, because for me a thriller has to be heart thumping, pulse racing and so on, and it isn't. But my goodness, it's psychological and clever and well written. It's about three women. Rachel, who is the daughter, and she is addicted to drugs and alcohol. Her mother, Lily, who wants Rachel repairing. And Amber, who is a therapist. And Lily makes sure that Rachel sees Amber to get therapy. But none of these women is quite who you think they are. They're all liars. They're all manipulative. They're all deceptive. They're all manipulating each other. And I thought it was a really cleverly written, interesting kind of exploration of nature and nurture and how we become who we become. But I think some people will think, oh, you know, a thriller as in the kind of heart-racing, heart-stopping thrillers that we encounter, and might not think they've got the book they were expecting. But I think it's a really clever read. So that was my first one. And that actually came out, as I said, on the 28th of April from Simon & Schuster. And then another Simon & Schuster one, but a book club favourite, good old Jack Jordan. We love Jack. I really enjoyed this. It's about a heart surgeon who basically her son is abducted, and she is told that unless she kills the next patient on the operating table, she won't see her son again. So it's about the moral choices that we have to make. Certainly you have to suspend your disbelief at times, because if it were me, I'd just go to the police. I mean, you know, maybe that's because I don't have kids and I'm not that bothered about them. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was cleverly plotted. I thought this was a thriller. I thought this was one that does race your heart along, does elevate your pulse. And it does make you wonder quite what choice you might make, given the situation that the doctor herself finds herself in. I still think I'd go to the police. But hey, I don't have a child, so I might be wrong there. But definitely read it. And this one is out on the 26th of May from Simon & Schuster. So cracking little read. Reviewed it on my weekly and it went up yesterday. So if anybody wants to see what I really thought, then it's there. But excellent book, Jack. Well done. So that's my May.
Lovely. Well, we've kind of lost Jo, who's trying to reboot. So what we'll do is we will go on to June, and then when Jo does come back, hopefully, she can then update us on her May and June's. So we will fly ahead to June, to this month, please, Anne.
Okay, time travel. Right. That's my first June book. Right. Stop the clocks now. You've all had your books of the year. This is going to be in one of my top books of ever in my 55 and a half years. It is truly stunning. It's one of those books that I've made time to read. I don't usually read early, but I was going down to London. It's quite thin, and it's an hour and 40 minutes from Retford to London. I read it there and back, and honestly, it is captivating. So Tasting Sunlight sold 350,000 copies in Germany and is published by Arenda in June. Ewald Ahrens is a well-known author in Germany. It's basically the story of friendship. It's about Sally. She's anorexic and she's run away from the clinic again. And she's stumbled across a farm in the German countryside, which is run by Liz, who's in her 40s and lives on her own. Liz doesn't say much. She just lets Sally stay, doesn't ask her any questions, lets her just get on with things. And gradually, although Sally was going to stay a few days, she stays longer. And Liz gradually explains to her about running of the farm and growing crops and keeping bees and how to pick the best pears. It's just beautiful. It's slow and a gently unraveling description of female friendship, generational friendship, but so beautifully done. It's like, I don't know, a perfect story for the times. It's healing. It certainly felt very healing for me for what I was going through at the time of reading it. It mended little bits of my heart that were broken, I think. It just made me feel as though there were some good things in the world. I just can't find the words. My review was quite short because there are no words enough, and I really hope that it does well in the UK because it deserves to. It's just beautiful. So please that one. Quite it. And my final book for June is The Love of My Life by Rosie Walsh. That's the proof copy. So Rosie Walsh wrote The Man Who Didn't Call. And this is very similar in the fact that when I picked up The Man Who Didn't Call, I thought, oh, it's kind of contemporary fiction, a bit of romance. And it isn't. There's so much more to it than that. It really surprised me. And The Love of My Life does the same. It's about Emma and Leo, who have been happily married for quite some time, 10 years or so. They've got a little girl. Emma has, she's a marine biologist, and she's just in remission from cancer. She's been through chemo. Leo is an obituary writer for one of the national newspapers. And I didn't know this, but apparently all the national newspapers have obituaries written ready for people. So obviously the Queen and that, but celebrities, they're all written ready. And because Emma used to front a TV show and she's quite well known, he started to write her obituary while she was going through chemo, and she's his wife. They've always been, you know, they're happy. They're kind of like everything that everyone wants to be, with like relationship goals. But Leo found things that didn't quite fit with the story that Emma had told him about her life. And she finds, she's always had kind of like off days, had issues with her mental health, where she'd go off onto the beach and stay there for a few days and look at crabs and marine things. And it's kind of a mix of romance and thriller, really, as Leo uncovers more about Emma. Emma tries to hide more about herself, and it all clashes together. It's quite emotionally trying at times, with the themes of mental health and manipulative behaviour, and how things in your past can shape things in your future. And it's a real good look at marriage and deception and how we aren't always what we seem to be. So my review will be in the Express. It's not been on my blog yet, but it is a really real book with such depth. Yeah, recommend that one too. That's me done.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Right, moving on to my Junes, or my to be reads. Haven't quite read yet, but we'll be reading at some stage, I promise. The first one is Complicit by Complicit by Winnie M. Lee. Now, this is her second novel. Her first novel was Dark Chapter, which was published in June 2017, which, if you haven't read it, is incredible. It's actually based on her own true story of being sexually assaulted back in 2008, and she has written a fictional story based on her experience, and it was harrowing and phenomenal. So she has a new book out, obviously, in June, the 23rd of June, which I think is going to be the date most books are coming out. I've read the blurb, and obviously, having loved her first book, loved is a strange word to describe someone's traumatic, harrowing experience, but was moved by her first. So this is basically, it says, you know what it's like, a comment here, a closed door there, turning a blind eye to get ahead. My name is Sarah. You won't have heard of me. A decade ago, I was on the cusp of being a big deal, but that was a long time ago. Now, instead of working in Hollywood, I teach students about it. And these are the two most important lessons you need to know about the film industry. 1, those with the money have all the power. Oh, Joe's back, sorry. 2, those with the power get whatever they want. So ignore these rules and the whole system will crumble. Stick to the rules and you'll succeed, but at what cost? Ask yourself, what would you have done? So that was just, I thought, anyway, so I adore Winnie. Hi, Joe. You're going to do a 4-book catch up afterwards. And then the final book for me this month, for June, is Michael Robotham, Lying Beside You. This is actually book 3 in a series, and I have read the first 2 books. It probably can be read as a standalone, but it goes against everything I believe, so I would suggest you start with this. It's about a guy called Cyrus Haven. His family was murdered when he's one of the main characters. His family was murdered by his brother when he was a young teenager. His brother has been incarcerated ever since. And this is the next follow-on story about when his brother being released from prison. So I can't say much about it because I haven't read it yet, but I'm just saying the first two books are phenomenal. The Good Girl, Bad Girl is the first book, followed by When She Was Good. So this is book 3, and I'm looking forward to reading it. So those are my books for June.
Jo, do you want to do your maze?
I don't mind. I'll go at the end and do all 4 of them.
Okay, my Junes then. I don't really need to say very much, do I? Mike Craven's The Botanist, book 5 in the Washington Post series, back with Tilly and Poe again. I thoroughly enjoyed this. In fact, I like this one better than the previous one, The Curator. I really enjoyed this. There's a slightly softer side to Poe that we see. There's the same level of humour, the same fast pace, the same short chapters, the same hooks at the end of the chapters, everything that you've come to expect from Mike's series. Yes, you could read it as a standalone, but you really need to read all of them. It's out from Constable, Little Brown's Constable, on the 2nd of June. Poor old Washington Poe has 2 things on the go this time, partly because Estelle Doyle, the what do you call them, pathologist, has been arrested for murdering her own father, and partly because the botanist is busy bumping people off and sending them press flowers to warn them about how they're going to die. And it is just, it's brilliant. I loved it. It's Mike at his best. I needn't say too much more about it because we all love Mike's books, so The Botanist. I put a review out for that on Monday, I think. And my last one is Night Crawling by Layla Motley. And this is out from Bloomsbury on the 7th of June. I haven't read it. It's the only one of the ones that I've chosen that I haven't read. And it's about Kira Johnson, who becomes a 17-year-old sex worker. And when Layla Motley wrote this, she was herself 17 years old. So I'll just read you the blurb because I don't know any more about it, but I think it sounds absolutely fascinating. Kira Johnson doesn't know what it is to live as a normal 17-year-old. With her mother in a rehab facility and an older brother who devotes his time and money to a recording studio, she fends for herself. And for 9-year-old Trevor, whose own mother is prone to disappearing for days at a time. As the landlord of their apartment block threatens to raise their rent, Kira finds herself walking the streets after dark, determined to survive in a world that refuses to protect her. Then one night, Kira is picked up by 2 police officers, and the gruesome deal she's offered in exchange for her freedom lands her at the centre of a media storm. If she agrees to testify in a grand jury trial, she could help expose the sickening corruption of a police department. But honesty comes at a price, one that could leave her family vulnerable to their retaliation and endanger everyone she loves. And I think that sounds quite an interesting debut. So I'm looking forward to reading that very soon. Night Crawling, Layla Motley.
Jo, we've got March. No, we haven't. We've got May. Worried you then. May and June, please.
Don't panic, May. Right, I'll go. First one for May. Again, I've lent my copy to a friend. Is the Night She Vanished by Vanessa Savage. Love Vanessa Savage. She's one of those authors where you sort of pre-order their next book because so you don't miss out. You want it as soon as it comes out. The Night That They Vanished is a. Let me find my review for that one. A family with a. Oh, I love families with a secret, don't you? So again, it's dual timeline and with 2 different characters. Hannah is 30 years old. She left her home when she was younger. Something happened in her village You don't find out quite what's happened and the reason that she had to leave home until much further on in the book. But she doesn't have anything to do with her father, her stepmother, or her half sister. But one day she's just split up with a boyfriend, a very abusive relationship, and she's out with her best friend, who was also from the same village, and introduced her to a new man. And this man's got a fabulous little sideline. He has a website, and it's like a crime touristy website. And she goes onto the website one day and goes on to this house, and it talks about a crime that's taken place that day, and it is the disappearance of her father, her stepmother, and her half-sister. And you go back a few weeks to the half-sister, and you find out what she's been up to, and then Hannah has to find out what has happened to them, why they vanished, and where they went. Very cleverly written, absolutely loved it. My second May one is The Dark by Sharon Bolton, who's done the opposite to every other author and gone from SJ back to Sharon. It's a Lacey Flint. At last, all the poor death threats can stop, because Sharon's written another Lacey Flint. Very dark, this one. I haven't read this one yet. I'm preparing to do it for the blog tour, Tracy, I promise.
It starts next week.
Yeah, I don't think I'm at the start, but got on my half-term reads, hopefully. With this one, again, there's a bit of a theme going on, because I've got another book with a very similar theme, an incel group, your women-hating involuntary celibates, which I'd never heard of before, and then there was a crime that took place, wasn't there, down south in Plymouth, I think it was. So that one, Lacey Flint, number 5. Go to June now, shall I?
Please, yes.
Okay. And again, this is the second one that I haven't read, but I know I'm going to love it because it is Tim Weaver.
And what's not to love?
The Blackbird. It's David Raker, number 9? I'm trying to think now. So he's a missing persons investigator. Absolutely brilliant crime writer. This one starts with a car crash. A couple are recorded on CCTV, laughing, untroubled. Then their car plunges into a 90-foot ravine. If the impact didn't kill them, then the inferno that follows will do. But when fire crews arrive at the scene, they find something impossible. The vehicle is empty. There we go. And then my final book and my last book for June is The Box by Dan Malakin. And again, this is going to be one of my books of the year because I absolutely love this one. Another one I couldn't put down. Again, revolves around a woman-hating incel group, far right, run by a very charismatic man in the public eye, and his sidekick, who is devastatingly good looking, but a very, very nasty man. If you like Simon Koenig's books, I think you're going to love this. It's got that very sort of similar feel to it. I just couldn't put it down. Lots of themes. The box isn't what you expect it to be. It's horrible. There are scenes with a box. I don't really want to go into them because they're not only very difficult to read, but the reasoning behind it is even worse. And that's really all I want to say about that. But it's fabulous. Really, really fabulous. A real adrenaline rush of a read there. So, and that's my last June.
Well, ladies, I think we need to give ourselves a huge, huge round of applause because we've managed to go through.
I was hoping you'd say huge gin then.
Well, a huge gin and a round of applause because that's 48 books done in 1 hour and 45 minutes.
Yay!
So I want to say thank you very much, guys. And I'll see you in December for the next 6, for the next. And I'm going to hopefully be able to upload this shortly to the blog, and we'll be sharing all of our recommendations. So if you stay there, I'm just going to switch off our recording.